to the channel. There's the fear, but it's only present when the road is empty, when it's just you and your thoughts. The story you're about to listen may seem like just another drive home from a late night out, but it's not. It's the story of a road carrying something that shouldn't be there, something that shouldn't be able to reach inside your car. We try to tell ourselves that we're safe inside the closed doors of our car, with music playing in the background and the GPS guiding us through the dark night.
But what if we're not alone on that road? What if there's something out there, something that's just waiting to cross your path, something that makes you stop in your tracks? Before you continue listening to this story, take a deep breath, look in the rearview mirror, listen to the silence of the night, and ask yourself this question. Would you stop if you saw a woman in the middle of the road? The woman on the highway was no ordinary woman, and after listening to this story, you may never drive alone at night again.
My world was that glow on the dashboard, a small digital sun in a darkness that was so thick you could practically taste it. It was 2:47 in the morning, and I was driving down what may have been the longest and most lonely road I'd ever driven. Not exactly a picturesque drive. I-37 North runs through scrublands, oil rigs, and a night sky that is so dark the stars may as well have stayed hidden. And then there's the silence, a strange companion that only seems to visit you when you're by yourself. My job, waiting at a distribution center 2 hours away, may as well have been a cruel joke, a test of endurance and a voluntary exile to the ends of the night. The tires sigh as I slide into the indie playlist I saved for nights like this. The music ticks along like a drumbeat, a soft rhythm under the constant roar of the highway. These sounds, these whispers, are my tender shelter, the delicate edge between now and what might be. Night falls heavy and tangible around me, and I find myself drawn to glance beyond the glare of the high beams. It's almost primal, this awareness of where I stand in the world and how small I am compared to something vast and endless out there in the dark. The AC hums along comfortably at 72 degrees. There's a faint, and for some reason amusing, smell of car air and yesterday's coffee. My tired eyes, tired from a night that would not end, continued to drift towards the road ahead, a road that seemed to go to a point, with no plan to stop. I looked at all the gauges, then the GPS, and everything looked fine. 45 miles straight north, sharp as a knife. The ETA remained, still, unmoving. The cell phone, sitting in its charger in the passenger seat, gave off a soft, glowing light, a small lifeline to any world beyond this wasteland. A dry smile played across my lips, that black humor that says, hey, if something goes wrong out here, in the middle of nowhere, well, it'll take us a while to notice. Well, something did. Not a wall exactly, but a shimmer at the edge of the world. Heat shimmer, not quite, because there is no heat. A band of white crossed the road, shimmering, quivering, as if it went on forever. Ground fog, the kind that sticks to low places and streams and creek beds. But there were no streams, no creek beds out here. Just dry earth, dry soil, dusty mesquite trees. I glanced down at the dashboard as a matter of habit. The outside temperature was a steady 68 degrees. No wind chill, no signs of any temperature drops that might lead to condensation. I glanced at my phone next, that weak signal nudging me ever so slightly with the basics of the weather, but nothing unusual there either. No signs of any fog or mist or clouds building in the weather forecast. In fact, the radar stretched hundreds of miles. And then it became clear. A shimmering ribbon, morphing into a blunt white ribbon, but more akin to mist, thicker even, several feet deep, the kind of mist that could consume those signs in the distance. It moved as if it had a life of its own, a coiled serpent of mist, radiating an unearthly glow. My gut, half asleep from habit and fatigue, registered a faint protest, a feeling that something was off, that this was not quite real. I eased off the gas pedal, the engine easing down as I slowed. But in the stillness of my normal speed, the ease of it became sharper, almost piercing. I inhaled deeply, involuntarily, and the dashboard lights flickered back to life. It was not an immediate plunge into blind driving, though, until I realized I was about to drive right into the fog itself. It didn't move, though, so maybe it was just waiting on me. Until I touched its pale edge with the headlights, that is, and the world outside my glass window became something I could feel as much as I could see. My high beams, once so sharp and clear, became slick and broken into 100 sharp shards, shining with a soft, tentative light on the world around the car. My mind, already taut with anxiety, became a single thin thread of focus, the yellow lines on the road, the little bit of understanding I had left, flashing in and out behind the unpenetrable fog. I slowed down even further, my foot poised hesitantly on the brake, somehow finding the rhythm of the road once more. Maybe it was the rhythm of the fog itself, the faint glow of the headlights that continued to lead me through the darkness. It seemed to go on forever, unmarked except for the slow, deliberate movement I was making through it, as though I were floating, drifting, moving through time itself, as though time had forgotten the meaning of standing still. I counted mile markers in my mind, saw the water tower rise and fall in the distance, saw the diner sign that had never lit in the years I'd been driving down this stretch of road, and saw all of it, saw everything vanish into nothingness, as though it had never existed in the first place. The familiar sound of a running car's hum did not taper off slowly. Instead, it was as if the fog had consumed it. Outside, the world was silent, but it was a silence that felt too quiet, too still. And then, of course, there was the omnipresent whir of the air conditioner, which was also slowly fading. And then, silence. It was a silence that felt heavy, expectant. Even my go-to playlist, my old friend, turned against me. Music was replaced by a jagged burst of static. I twisted the volume, the skip button. Nothing. The display screen flickered, spitting forth a mess of odd symbols before it died. A cold ache of unease began to seep into my peace. The lights flickered on and off like a group of fireflies in a jar, each one flashing its own warning message. Check engine, ABS, tire pressure, and a whole slew of other problems. The speedometer needle quivered and danced before finally coming to rest at 0 as I inched my way along. For what felt like an eternity, my gas gauge remained steadfastly at half a tankful. Then, with a rough and uneven start, it came to life in a wild and erratic fashion, flashing low fuel. I muttered under my breath in a low and firm tone, saying, "No, no, no." The quiet around me felt off balance somehow, a strange flavor in the air. I stamped my brake pedal down, and it released quietly and almost unnoticed. I held the wheel as hard as I could until my knuckles were white, and inched the car forward into the unknown. The car was moving along the pavement as though sliding into the belly of this strange, warped world. Inside, the air was cooler, despite the air conditioning running on maximum, with a smell of damp earth and moldy water. I shivered, not from the cooler air, but from the stark realization that I had lost all control. The highway, the fog, everything was subject to rules I could not comprehend. My eyes ached from gazing at a wall of white that seemed to shift not an inch. Every shadow, every glimmer of light seemed like a menace, a trick of tiredness and terror. I inched along, maybe 10 miles an hour, my hands gripping the steering wheel tightly, my knuckles white with tension. The car's interior was silent, the radio off, the motor a mere whisper, as if it too were afraid to break the heavy silence of the fog. And then I saw it, a flicker of light, not a definite object, more a distortion in the mist itself, right in front of me, in the middle of the fast lane. Too big to be a deer, too small to be a road sign. I slammed on the brakes, the pedal compressing softly, then the car jerked anyway, tires squealing a little in protest at the slick, damp road. My high beams, which had been weak and nearly useless against this fog, suddenly blazed with a fierce, single-minded force, as if every watt were funneled into this one freak occurrence. And then she appeared. There she stood, perfectly still, directly in the path of the car. A woman, tall, so thin, so impossibly thin, that it looked almost unreal. She wore what looked to be an old, ragged white dress. Her head hung low. Her dark hair was slicked back against her spine. A veil of darkness obscured her face. She stood with a posture of despair. Her shoulders were hunched, her hands loosely clasped together in front of her. She was crying. She stood there, illuminated by the headlights, and something was wrong. She was a black hole of light, sucking it all in, consuming it whole. Everything around her dissolved into nothingness. Her dress, white as snow, did not reflect the glare of the headlights even remotely. No, it sucked them in, becoming dull and nearly gray, as if made of shadow and sorrow. It clung to her form, damp and nearly transparent, revealing a faint outline of her gaunt form beneath. Her breathing caught against my chest, not nervous, but something real. She wasn't quite human. Her posture was locked, her radiance a dull, wrong halo. Old, heavy sorrow clung to her, weighing down her shoulders. All of these things told me she wasn't what I thought she was. No hitchhiker would stand waiting on a deserted road in the middle of the night, wearing a ghostly dress. No car accident victim would have this timelessness. She was a cold that seeped through the windshield, deep into my bones. I opened my mouth to yell, but all that came out was a dry croak. My foot remained pressed down on the brake, as if it would break off any moment. The car came to a stop 10 feet away from her, still bent with sorrow. There was something in the air, something metallic and slightly tangy, as if old blood and rain had mixed together. The room was quiet, but the quiet was the quiet of something that didn't sleep. It was still and aware and trembling with a barely perceptible vibration that my ears didn't detect, but my brain did. And then another presence, another being. Hunger. A predator with grief that didn't quite fit. Not lost, but hungry. And I, trapped inside my metal shell, was the prey. The vision seared itself into my brain. The torn white dress clung to damp flesh. Dark hair. The bowed head. The eyes cast down as if hiding something that couldn't ever be spoken. And the tears. Oh, the tears. Silent, and yet I felt them. Deep and soul-crushing and full of despair. I screamed silently inside my own head. Get out! Get away! Now! But I couldn't move. I was trapped. I was frozen. I had no power. The woman didn't move. She didn't lift her head. She just stood there, waiting. And I knew with a knowledge beyond rational thought, if I stayed, if I dared to open that door, if I studied her as long as I could, I'd never find my way out. The reality struck me like a lightning bolt out of a clear blue sky, a thunderclap that sliced through my mind like a machete through a jungle of terrors. La Llorona, the weeping woman, the ghost story, the legend, the campfire tale, the urban myth, the scary story, the stuff of which urban legends are made, the stuff of which nightmares are born, the stuff of which troublemakers, misfits, those who don't quite fit in, talk about in dark alleys, out of earshot of those who wouldn't understand. And she's here, where there's supposed to be water, where kids are supposed to swim, where kids are supposed to shoot each other with water guns, where mist hangs in the air like a veil of tears. What is she doing here? Out here on this stretch of Highway 37, where there's never been water to speak of. Last night, I spent hours scouring the web for any tidbits of information, and suddenly it all came to me. My creepypasta, my ridiculous idea, my harebrained notion had found a face in this new world. A new world indeed, a world that has drained rivers dry, awakened cities from a long sleep, a new highway carved through the heart of America, old and new, forgotten and remembered. It's become a riverbed, really, a riverbed of asphalt through which flow the lost, the desperate, the hopeless. Another place to hunt. Another shiver ran down my spine. My numb fingers fumbled the gears. Reverse. I pressed down hard on the accelerator, and the car, awakened from its nap, jerked backward. I did not care where I was going, only that I was leaving her behind. As I backed away, the silence inside the car gave way to a harsh, jarring noise. Not from outside, not from her, from inside. A low, plaintive wail, a grief so deep and endless that it filled the space. It was not just a noise, though. It was alive. I could hear it through the speakers, even though there was no music playing. I could feel it through the air, cool, damp, smelling of rot and despair. It was a mother's grief, amplified, distorted, and injected straight into my mind.
Ay, mis hijos.
Which in Spanish means, "Oh, my children." The wail pierced the air with a strange clarity and precision, probing my eardrums from within. It was not just crying, it felt like a power, a mournful energy that attacked the fabric of sanity itself. It was not noise for its own sake, but a means to emotion, a device for feeling designed to snap and twist. Fear took a new form that night, and I trembled as it coursed through me, every nerve and breath. La Llorona, the old wandering spirit, had learned to adapt. In 2026, in a world of days lived through a screen and nights spent under the isolation of a car, she had made herself at home. No longer the spirit by the river under the light of the moon, she was a disruptive pattern, a specter in the machine. Our screens, our satellites, this vast network of connection and static, all built to outpace the wild, the unknown, the dark corners of the world. And yet we created a world in which the very essence of our most ancient fears could walk right into us. La Llorona did not need to run alongside me. La Llorona did not need to run alongside any car. She inserted herself into the very heart of what I had thought would safeguard me, what I had thought would safeguard us all. A connection, a link. And there she stood, her endless grief, her endless sorrow, forcing herself into the space that I had thought would contain it, all within my own car. And yet the screams continued to build, the howl growing into a chorus of ghostly voices all around me. This was not an illusion. This was not a trick of the eye. This was an assault. La Llorona had not been a monster in a carved-out form. La Llorona had been a monster in concept, a monster in fact, a monster in how I perceived fact. My blood ran cold with an ancient chill and a modern edge, as if danger itself had raided the thrift shop of time and was now dressed in yesterday's clothing and today's glare. What if the legends aren't just myths, but updates? What if they're patching themselves into the modern world? What if they figure out how to hack our tech and ride our screens and programs? What if the skinwalkers are using our deepfakes? What if evil spirits are learning how to code? The idea that the tools we use to protect ourselves, the tools we use for entertainment, could suddenly turn against us, that's a terror that's as old as the day I was born. She's not just crying for her children. She's crying for the death of innocence in our safe world. She's crying for all of us. The lone drivers who think they're safe and then suddenly realize the old horrors never went away. They just moved the block. I pressed the gas a little harder, tires squealing slightly as I wrestled the car through the tight lane, in search of an escape from the noise and the phantom cries eating away at my brain from inside the car. I jerked the wheel hard left and threw in a reckless U-turn on the highway. I sped away in the other direction, trying to build as much distance as possible between myself and that grotesque creature and the sobbing thing that trailed behind it. But then, in an instant, it was gone. Not just gone, but as if a curtain had been torn away from my eyes. One moment I was surrounded by white nothingness. The next, the road stretched out before me, dark and welcoming, with faint stars twinkling above in the night. The car came back to life like a city awakening in the morning, a quiet, then a loud noise. The radio stuck to my indie music playlist, at first crackling, then suddenly playing a familiar, upbeat tune as if nothing out of the ordinary had happened at all. The lights on the dashboard, which had been a mess of icons just moments before, went dark, then settled into a soft, steady glow around the speedometer and fuel gauge, which registered a solid half-tank of gas. And the GPS, which had also died, suddenly came to life again, tracing my exact location on the screen, a solitary arrow pointing north. I hadn't taken my foot off the gas pedal at all, not for an instant. My heart pounded in my chest. My breathing came in short, sharp gasps. I glanced in my rearview mirror, then my side mirrors. Nothing was behind me. No mist, no ghostly woman in a torn white dress. The highway stretched out behind me, then out before me, quiet, still, just as it had been before this incredible, this wonderful, this strange moment began. Like I just witnessed a perfectly choreographed illusion meant to blow my mind wide open. The howls of something unseen, the bite of the air that felt like metal in my lungs, a cold that seeped straight into my bones. It was all real, and it drew me in, held me tight. Her pain, that predator's stillness, had carved itself into my mind in a way that would never be forgotten, a scar that would forever plague my thoughts. I drove for a couple more hours, didn't stop, didn't dare look at a clock. My hands on the wheel were scraped raw against my knuckles. The whiteness of my knuckles never changed. If a shadow moved at the edge of my vision, it was her. If a wind rustled against my window, it was a sigh of pain. I kept looking back in my rearview mirror, hoping to catch a glimpse of her, a pale figure moving in closer and closer, her howls riding in on the wind. But there was nothing back there, just darkness and a road that stretched out into nothing. I clocked in, went through the motions, and steered the day forward like a man half dazed and half awake, surprised and afraid and what have you. So I told the crew that I slept like a stone and that I had a wild dream. What else is there to say? What else is there to own up to? How do you describe what you saw and what you felt and what you think hijacked my car and my mind? How do you describe an old legend, an ancient myth that has spun and spun and spun for ages and ages and ages, and then suddenly reinvents itself for 2026? That night did not just happen to me. That night changed me. That night attacked my core. That which had been a straight path ahead, bright and full of promise and possibilities, that which had been a bright and shining road ahead, suddenly became a playground of shadows and doubt. Night after night, I drive home alone. For years and years and years, I thought it was peaceful and sacred in its stillness and quietness, but it tests my nerves and my vigilance and my sanity. I must drive. I must turn up the music and turn on the lights inside my car and search for what's wrong and what's off and what cannot be explained in my world. I know what I know. I hear what I hear. No tricks of sight, no tricks of mind, no illusions born from fatigue. She was not just a woman, not really, driving that highway down into the night. She was La Llorona, and La Llorona has a new river to haunt, a new highway to lead us down. So ask yourselves, you night owls out there, traveling those roads alone in your cars, have you ever seen something that you cannot explain? Something that sends a chill down your spine and speaks to you in ancient tongues through your car speakers? These old stories, these ancient legends, they are not staying in the past. They are evolving, adapting, learning how to draw us into their darkness, one digital whisper at a time. Mind where you drive.
tales don't end when the danger goes away, and some tales never end at all. The road is with you. It follows you as you sink into the quiet or drift further and further away from it, further and further away from those moments when the music stops and the air grows cool. We try to pretend that old tales are old. Old tales are nothing to us. Old tales are nothing but old rules, old borders, old history. We want to push it all away, shove it all into a corner of our minds, and pretend it never happened. But what if the rules go away? What if someone like her doesn't need any of those rules? What if someone like her only needs a little time alone with you, out there on that road, alone in your car, no one else around, no one else in sight? Next time you drive that road with music on and the world quiet enough to almost hear it, listen. Listen for the fog that shouldn't be there. Listen for the voice that isn't on the radio. Listen for the voice that is somehow there anyway. Listen for the figure that steps out of the dark when the dark falls. And don't stop, because some things don't ask for help. Some things wait. And sometimes when they find you, sometimes they don't let go. You've survived another tale from 9 lives of fear, but don't get comfortable. If the shadows whispered to you tonight, hit like before they whisper again. Share this video with someone who thinks they're brave. Let's see how long their courage lasts. And subscribe, because around here, every click feeds the darkness, and the darkness remembers. Where the shadows linger long after the story ends. Stay scared.
Aún estoy